From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
Gun control legislation doesn't usually get much attention at the State House, but in the wake of the tragic shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, there's a renewed focus. The Police Chiefs Association says they are once again going to ask lawmakers to pass tighter rules, including a law that would take responsibility of approving and issuing gun permits out of the hands of cities and towns, making it the responsibility of the Attorney General's office. We sit down with the former superintendent of the Rhode Island State Police, Brendan Doherty, for his take on gun control and school safety. Plus,
and just as he got into the Category 5 hurricane, the congressman jumped off and went to Washington.
Months after a double-digit defeat to Congressman David Cicilline, what are Doherty's plans? And what does he think the beleaguered state Republican Party needs to do to once again become relevant? Our guest this week on Newsmakers, former colonel and one-time Republican congressional candidate, Brendan Doherty. Good morning. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the panel, my colleague, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nisi. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning, Colonel. It's great to have you back on the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you.
Before we dive into the questions surrounding gun control, sure. I'd like to ask what many viewers are probably wondering. It's been a few months since Election Day. Looking ahead, what are Brendan Doherty's plans?
Well, right now I've opened my own consulting company, the Doherty Group LLC. I'm doing security consulting, and so I've been somewhat busy with that. But as far as I think you're asking what my political plans are, I really haven't made a decision yet. I spent the last year and a half running for Congress in the 1st District, and I enjoyed the campaign, but I only focused on that race, and I really didn't consider any other positions. But I enjoyed public service as superintendent of the state police, and I think I would not that I think I would like to continue in public service in some capacity, but I'm really not sure yet what that is.
Your name comes up a lot in speculation about Republican candidates for governor. Have you given that any thought, that job?
I have given it some thought, and I'll continue to give it some thought. But
what sort of thoughts?
Well, you know, I'm just assessing what's right for me, what's right for Rhode Island, and my family. I have to put my family first. My wife and my 2 children were tremendous during the campaign, very supportive, and you know, I have to. Anyone who has run for office before knows that. I mean, if you run a credible campaign and you put the time and the money into that, it takes a lot out of a family, and so those are things I need to assist. I need to continue to address, but I certainly wouldn't rule it out.
And when you say rule it out, I just want to be clear. The governor could be, you know, are we talking 2014? Are you closing the door on a run for governor in 2014, or are you leaving that cracked open a little bit? No,
I would not close that door.
Okay. Have you been approached by other Republicans wondering, you know, maybe Alan Fung or Scott Avedisian? Has anyone?
I'm approached every day, every day. So you know, I've had private conversations with John Robital and Mayor Fung and Mayor Avedisian and other members of the Republican Party, and I'll continue to assess that, but
when do you think you make that decision? When you go, okay, I get it.
Well, I thought right after the election, I gave it some time. I went on a little vacation, and
I bet you did.
Yeah, and I thought that, you know, I'll know within a month what I want to do. But it's a process, and running for governor is a long process. So it has to be carefully thought out. And if I did that, I would have to have. Well, let me just say, I haven't ruled it out.
All right, we're going to dive back into politics in a bit, but I do want to talk about gun control and really why we're bringing it up, and that's that tragic shooting in Newtown, Connecticut. First, just generally speaking, what was your reaction when you first heard about Newtown?
Just that it's horrific. You know, I've been involved in so many tragic situations throughout my career and seen so much tragedy and so much pain, but there's nothing worse than to see children killed, whether it be in a car accident or in a shooting like that. You know, thank God we don't have too many of those where children are gunned down like that. Only a demented person could do such a thing. I've been to so many homicides throughout my career, but most of them you understand what the motive was. the motive there was only insanity, and we have to stop that. We have to. We used to talk about the need to get guns out of the hands of criminals in this country, and frankly, we don't do a real good job at that. But now the conversation is we need to get guns out of the hands of people suffering from mental illness. I've been talking about it for a while, prior to even running for office. You know, on the ATF gun permit, it's self. It asks the question, I believe, have you ever been convicted of a felony? If someone checked off no, they can get that in the background check. And then the term background is somewhat nebulous, because all that is an NCIC check to see if someone who has been arrested and convicted. So if someone lied on that, that comes back in that background check. If someone checked off that they don't have any mental health issues, there's no mechanism for that to come back.
It's self-reporting.
Self-reporting, and because of HIPAA, it has prohibited law enforcement from checking on that. So let me tell you, you could have someone who was 18 years old and delivered a marijuana cigarette, which because of the delivery it's a felony, and lived a perfectly, he's 50 years old and he's never been arrested since then, and is a model citizen. And another fella who never has been arrested but has spent half of his life in mental institutions, and he can just check off no, and there's no mechanism to prove that. Now, if you have a very, very small town, the police chief might know that person and try to stop that if he hears that there's a gun purchase there, or even a gun owner in a very small town. But you know, this is a big country, and we have a lot of people purchasing firearms that shouldn't be able to purchase them. And you know, I don't really. I think the NRA actually. I think they just had conducted a poll on that. If I'm not mistaken, 91% of members of NRA would agree with my position on that. I'm glad to see they've come around with that. We need to do a better job in keeping guns out of the hands of people who suffer from mental illness. And that being said, that's not just the purchaser. That's someone who owns a home. I know that this lady who was killed by her son in Connecticut, I believe she lawfully owned those guns.
Right.
Well, she also had a son living in that house that was suffering from mental illness. So we need to stop that as well.
Does that mean checking on the mental health of not only the individual looking to purchase the gun, but immediate family members?
Yeah, I believe that should amend those questions to, is there anyone in your household that is suffering from mental illness?
I'm wondering, you mentioned a small town, Newtown, a very small town, and you mentioned how horrific this crime was, and you've been to a lot of homicide scenes. What is the impact on the first responders? I'm wondering, I'm sure your thoughts went to the professionals.
It's a great question, because it's the first thing I was thinking. You know, there was misinformation coming out of there. But can you just imagine the horror that those first responders, the rescue and police officers were confronted with when plus they don't know if the shooter's still in the building. They're probably receiving misinformation. They're dispatching information back to their respective stations or whatnot, and then the state police came in and trying to understand exactly what happened there. And when you have children, it's just, I just can't tell you. You know, I was at the station fire here, obviously a totally different issue, but just dealing with the family members, because when I watched that on the news in Connecticut, I knew that obviously parents are going to be responding quickly, and no school is prepared for obviously for a shooting like that, but the aftermath and dealing with the parents. Where do you put the parents? They roped off the area pretty well, quickly, but you know, you have parents that are horrified not knowing if their children are alive or dead. Did
your thoughts go to the station nightclub fire when you heard about this and we were approaching the 10-year anniversary?
Yes, it did, only in the respect that the parents don't know what's going on, and there were parents that responded there that day. I remember being there at, I got there around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and just dealing with parents constantly wanting to know if they're, and those children obviously were older. Some of those were adults and you know, not school children, but it's just the anguish of not knowing whether their loved one is dead or not.
And you can't tell them at that point.
No,
you don't know.
As a matter of fact, that dragged out for quite a long time because we had to identify people. And that was a whole another process, and it was very, very difficult.
I want to pivot back to the issue of the mentally ill that you brought up. Rhode Island is only one of 4 states that does not participate in the FBI database, the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. For many, and as you pointed out, even gun owners, gun supporters, this seems silly that we're not submitting names into this database. Do you have any idea, as you know, in your time as a colonel of the state police, why Rhode Island doesn't put names into this database?
No, I'm not familiar with that. I don't recall that. But
I'd imagine you think we should.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think, especially in the day and age of computers, we have this information and data available to us. Why not use it?
And you said a good point that sometimes small towns, the chiefs there know, hey, this guy's had some problems, I'm not going to issue the gun permits. But the Rhode Island Police Chiefs Association has tried and repeatedly failed to get the General Assembly to pass a law that would put that responsibility in the hands of the Attorney General's office. The thought being, we're a very small state, there should be one clearinghouse for this information. Sure. Let the AG's office take control of it. Where are you on that? Do you support that idea?
I support the Rhode Island Police Chief's idea, initiative to do that because, again, like you just mentioned, we're a small state. There should be one clearinghouse, one mechanism, one office that holds that data and records. And the bottom line is, police chiefs don't want to have to sign that paperwork because they never know who. There are many, many law-abiding citizens that come in to obtain a gun permit, but they never know who that one person is that wants to commit the nefarious act. I think it's also important to those law-abiding citizens that want to purchase a gun to have one central clearinghouse. The Attorney General's office, I think, is the right place for that.
Governor Chafee was on with us here last week at this table. He said in his State of the State he's going to talk with members of the Assembly, the leadership, about what Rhode Island could do on gun control laws. He told us last week he was surprised when he took a closer look that Rhode Island doesn't have some of the stricter gun laws in the country that he thought we might have as a blue state, as a more liberal state. What do you see room in Rhode Island state law? We mentioned one example there to ramp up gun control here.
Well, I think we need, it's a larger conversation because, yeah, do we need gun control here? Obviously, we need gun control, but we need smarter regulation and smarter laws. We have many, many gun laws on the books that people don't even know about. But we won't, again, my issue with this is to get guns out of the hands of people suffering from mental illness. Now, Rome wasn't built in a day. That's going to take a while to do that because Congress, in my view, should look at the HIPAA Act and have an amendment to that as it relates to gun
HIPAA
purchase.
Act, for people at home, is the Medical Privacy Act Congress passed a number of years ago.
Right. I think we need to look at the high-capacity magazines. Someone could, and by the way, I'm not a member of a gun club or a member of the NRA, but I am supportive of the Second Amendment. And any of these, or some of these recommendations, like the one I'm about to mention, doesn't impede on the Second Amendment, in my view. A high-capacity magazine, if someone has a rifle, so-called assault rifle, with 30 rounds, you really need 30 rounds to go to a range to shoot. Really, 30 rounds? No, I don't think so.
It sounds like you support the president's push to ban the sale of assault rifles as well as these high-capacity magazine
I don't
clips.
support, I'm not in Congress, so I can't make that decision, but I won't say I support the president's measures there. Some of them are good. I believe the high-capacity magazines, yeah, we need to look at that. Does someone really need 30 rounds? No, I don't believe so. So, but again, I hope the mental health issue doesn't get lost in this whole debate. And there's also, how about the movie industry and the video games? I mean, we need to do this together in synergy, this country, because we've seen just too much violence, and we need to stop it. And I think that we need to look at that. Maybe they could be a partner in that. We don't want to inhibit the First Amendment rights of the movie industry, but I believe they need to look at some of the violence that we see on television. Our young kids.
We're going to take a break here on Newsmakers. When we come back, we're going to get back to politics, reflecting on campaign 2012. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Sitting to my right, colleague from WPRI.com, Ted Nesi. Our guest this week is the former colonel of the state police, Brendan Doherty, and of course a one-time congressional candidate, and that's what I want to talk about right now, whether you like it or not. Is there anything you wish you had done differently in the campaign?
You know, it's a good question, but it really isn't. I mean, you can always Monday morning quarterback a campaign. I wanted to make sure I didn't fall into an "I got you" question or say something, accidentally say something that really didn't comport well. I was very careful in our messaging, but I didn't realize when I first announced how important the presidential election would be on the same
Is that what you attribute the 12
Absolutely.
It is.
Absolutely. You know, our polling was good. I know we had an early artificial lead, 15 points. And
artificial? Why do you call it artificial?
Well, because it was too early yet. In my trips to Washington, you know, I became very close with John Rogers from the NRCC, and he would say that, no, at the end, it's going down to the wire. And people would be excited about the 15, including me. And it's, I realized it was an artificial lead. It was early. The congressman at that time was going through some adverse media attention, and I knew as it got closer it would tighten up, and it did. But I thought that we would still be successful, and then right after his primary, he got a bump, and we saw it quickly in our internal polls. But then we went back up again in our internal polls, and our intelligence from the other side told us that they had the same numbers, and we pretty much had the same numbers. And but there was no controlling that President Obama's tidal wave coming through the Northeast. You just couldn't control it, and it was so many people came out that never voted before, and.
There's been a lot of talk.
I have no regrets, though. Let me just say that. I have no regrets.
There's been a lot of talk. We actually had John Robitaille on a couple weeks ago, and he said, look, the Republican brand is just in trouble in the Northeast, at least in presidential years. You know, it's just very hard to get around the fact that it doesn't play well in New England right now, nationally, for candidates like you. Do you think that's true? And were you surprised at the level of sort of how much it wasn't about Brendan Doherty, it was just the R after your name?
Well, I believe that was only because of the presidential year, and I believe that President Obama, look what happened to Scott Brown. I think he got hit with the same thing. Scott Brown is a moderate Republican, votes 66% of the time with his party, works with both parties, but...
Isn't that the point, though, that there's nothing local candidates can do to overcome just how people are thinking about the Republican versus Democrat thing nationally?
You know what, yes. But here locally, you know what I would get every single day? I would get someone who would come up to me and say, I've been a Democrat my whole life, but I'm voting for you this time. Or others that would say, I've been a Democrat my whole life and I just can't go over. Because my grandfather was, and my father, my grandfather. I understand that, and but I thought that we would be able to I thought we'd be successful at the end.
Do you think you would have won in a midterm?
Yeah, I don't want to speculate because I ran in 2012 and I lost. So I don't want to. There's no sour grapes here. I wish Congressman Cicilline well. I think that you know the future will tell whether the brand is wounded.
You mentioned the polls that you had internally, and there's been a lot of Republicans have been criticizing actually the Republican polling firms, saying they're not giving accurate data to the candidates. And I was wondering, you had one of the best funded Republican campaigns we've had in a long time. You were able to get that help. Are you satisfied with the information you got from your consultants out of Washington about what was going on the ground here?
Yes, because our polling reflected, matter of fact, it reflected Channel 12's polling. Up until the last couple of days, we conducted a poll and had us up by, I think it might have been 3 days before, had us up by 6 points.
Our poll, though, we should point out, had the congressman.
Had us down by 1.
That's right.
That's right.
The last one.
No, I understand that. And I wanted to believe our poll, not
Can't blame you for that.
The Fleming poll. But and you know, he does a great job, and his poll was accurate at that point, obviously. But look, it's a new world. I know it's tough to capture exactly who you can get to vote in polls. Do they get enough people with the model? Did they get enough people on their cell phones? I don't know, but I know there were a lot of people that never voted before that came in to vote because of the presidential.
Ted asked you about the National Republican Party. I want you to look locally if you can. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. This state Republican Party is just a disaster. It's in tough shape. They lost seats in the General Assembly. There are no state office holders from the GOP and, of course, in the federal delegation. What does the state Republican Party need to do you think, to boost its numbers, to become relevant again?
Well, you know, I really don't know the answer to that because, you know, I have conversations with Mayor Avedisian, Mayor Fung, and John Robital, and people who I hold in high regard like that, Joe Trillo. There's so many of them, Senator Bates. But I think that they just need to, I would say that they just need to get together and be more cohesive with one message going out rather than, you know, it's a funny game. Everyone has their own opinion. Everybody knows how you could have won the race and what issues to tackle.
You sound almost a little bitter on that, I got to tell you. It's just everyone has their own opinion.
No, I mean, you know, when you run for office, everywhere you go, there's political experts. And every street corner, I would bump into a political expert and tell me, you've got to say this. Well, our polling would tell us not to say that. And
those hack
not
reporters have their own ideas. So.
Well, speaking of hack reporters, I have a question for you, actually. Yeah, well, I'm curious about your thought on the media now. I mean, you remember the good old days where I'd come to the state police barracks in Situate and ask you about tough hitman or a big drug bust at the state police. But then you had Ted and I grilling you on policy and on issues, and at the debate we'd really challenge you. Did your perspective on the media change?
Not at all. I think the media was very fair to me. I appreciate the media has a job to do. I thought in this race they were very fair. So that's all I can say. I think you recognize that I studied very hard because, you know, there were issues that I never had to address before as superintendent of the state police. And as superintendent, I never had to address global warming or the Bush tax cuts. So, yeah, I studied very hard for those debates and put a lot of prep in New York and Washington and Rhode Island, Massachusetts. I would bounce around and use different people to debate against. And hey, I put a lot of work into it. I have no regrets. Ian Pryor was a great campaign manager. As you know, he's recognized as a talented individual. He's been hired in Washington. And I wish him well. I'm sure you'll see him as a bright future star. So I have no regrets. There's no bitterness at all. I won, I think, 8 or 9 of the towns in the district. What could I have done the next time? I could have run at a time when Barack Obama wasn't running.
That's not a bad idea for a lot of people. If you, we were talking before about running for governor and thinking about that. You know, we've been talking a ton about politics here, but you know, when you look at the state still has very high unemployment. We have all sorts of issues up in the assembly. I was covering the gay marriage debate last night. If you were to run for governor and you were elected, what would you want to work on first? What would be a priority for you as you look at the state level now versus federal before?
I think that it's the same thing as national. It's the economy and jobs. Look at, we have, I believe we're tied now for the highest unemployment rate in the country.
That's true, with Nevada.
With Nevada. That's shameful. We can do better than this. Rhode Island's a great little state. We should be a model state. And I think we're going in the right direction in some areas. I just saw a report, RIPAC just issued a report on the auspices of the President, Senate,
moving the needle.
Senate President, moving the needle, Teresa Paiva-Weed. And they identify the areas where we're weak and a couple of areas where we're strong. Quality of life. We're strong here in Rhode Island, but our economy it needs help. And small businesses are the economic engine that drives this state. So we need to make it more palatable for small businesses to survive here and for others to say, hey, look, Rhode Island's open for business. You know something that bothers me too? I live in Cumberland. And oftentimes when I'm taking a shortcut to Pawtucket, you drive down Route 1 and through North Attleboro, buy the Emerald Square Mall and buy all those shops. And I see more Rhode Island plates than I do Massachusetts plates there. And it's the same thing over in Seekonk. When I think Rhode Island should buy North Attleboro and buy Seekonk, and then we solve the problem.
Is that a sales tax issue in
Yeah,
your opinion?
yes. I believe that eventually it'd be nice if we're able to rebrand ourselves and bring the sales tax down to eventually to zero. And we'll, instead of money being siphoned out of Rhode Island, money will be brought back to Rhode Island. The good thing is a lot of those employees at those malls and shops are Rhode Islanders, but people are spending money over there. It's going to Massachusetts sales tax, and that's shameful.
We have 30 seconds left. I'm going to ask you a wise guy question, so it's got to be like old debate style here. Yes or no, the massive crackdown on organized crime is over. That investigation dated back to when you were colonel. Yes or no, is the mob in Rhode Island, La Cosa Nostra, is it dead?
You don't give me a yes or no here. Yes, it's almost dead.
With an asterisk.
Yes.
It could always come, the embers could come back to flames.
Yeah, I think that it's certainly not the mob that we once knew. It really isn't. Society doesn't accept the games they play and the extortions, the shakedowns, the scams.
Former Colonel, the Rhode Island State Police, Brendan Doherty, thank you very much for joining us. If you missed any of it, it's online, WPRI.com. For Ted Nesi, I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.